But I think in truth, we are not in a culture war. We are in a spiritual war. And so both sides of the culture war are on the same side of the spiritual war. Um, how to describe this quickly is difficult, but I consider the movement of the aion, that which we talked about in the beginning, these Platonic months, these 2,000-year periods. I see the old aion and I see the new aion. I see the old aion as deeply moralistic, as deeply traditional or anti-traditional, deeply polarized. I see the new aeon as childish, um, and moving toward new things, good and bad. I think the desire to overcome the body is a deeply aeonic desire. Equally, I see the drive to live in peace and harmony with God is also a deeply aeonic desire. Both are very modern, very, very new ways of looking at old things. Um, the old world is very violent and wants to continue to exist. It wants to prevent this new world from being born. And both sides of the culture war are attempting to maintain old aeon philosophies into the new. And it will not work, quite simply. The next 2,000 years are going to be insane and unimaginable to us now. And the best thing that we can do is simply attempt to move things along, is to commit to the movement of the world, which is the movement of God. Not try to maintain kind of silly human structures, but to move with the world, the vibe.
What does that look like? Can you give a concrete example?
Do you know, have I told you, or have you seen my discussions on vibe materialism?
No.
So, did you hear about the vibe shift?
No.
Okay, all right. The vibe. So, does a glass of water vibe?
Depends who you ask. My dad would say yes, water has a spiritual consciousness and a
But
memory.
you, I'm just
I don't
asking you.
know.
Don't think about it. Don't
Yeah.
think about it. Does a glass of water vibe? Vibe or no vibe?
I want to say yes.
Okay, vibe. So, does a watch vibe or no vibe?
I think everything has a vibe.
Okay, would you agree some things have bad vibes, though?
I would interpret them as bad vibes. My body would
Yes,
interpret them as bad vibes. Yeah.
absolutely. And the body is the ultimate vibe. The body is the thing that vibes. So, to me, moving away from old morality toward vibe, toward a matter of like, what feels good to my body, what feels intuitively right, and what is exciting, what inspires passion, what inspires ecstasy and excitement. That is what vibes. Equally, just having calmness is a vibe. Not necessarily a good vibe or bad vibe, just a vibe. But it's a matter of an energetic dimension to the world. And by moving past the purely moralistic or mechanical viewing of the world, by adding a spiritual, energetic dimension, you simply begin to live differently. And it's something that Philip K. Dick put very, very clearly, which is just if you read the I Ching, you become Taoist. If you take seriously the wisdom of the I Ching, your life changes. This is true of all things. And what I am what I see in the new world is that spirituality and the occult and whatever you want to call it, but all of these undiscovered dimensions, the psychic, outer space, inner space, all of these are going to be the focus of the next 2,000 years. So beginning to focus on them now and not having this kind of reactionary and conservative in the ultimate sense of like, no, these are new, I don't understand it, it's bad. Of like the spiritual, the psychic, the occult, like, oh, I don't want to know, I don't want to know it. This isn't old, I don't understand it, it's not worth knowing. Which, of course, I'm not saying it's right wing. Communists are some of the most guilty of despising the spiritual and the religious. I think politics in general don't vibe. I think they're an anti-vibe. I think they exist to steal the vibe from the world. Much of the world now is structured around feeding on natural energies and preventing people from living as individuals and living correctly. So, the new world vibes. That's it.
Okay, I've got a few things to say about that. So the first one is the same thought has popped up as I had when you talked about doing ceremonies, occult ceremonies in LA, which was magic. The magic that you're playing with is incredibly powerful. Are you sure you're using it correctly? Because power can go towards good and mostly towards, I think mostly it's bad if you don't use it correctly like Solomon did.
When you do your will, you move past good and evil. Good and evil is a realm that is vital to those who want to define their lives outside of power.
Okay. You can say good and evil aren't real, which makes sense. I
I
think I
don't
was
think
just
they're not
using it
real.
as a
I don't think they're
yeah,
not real.
but I was saying more. I mean, what I was using was I was using those terms in a relative fashion. And so, for instance, um, I think most people would agree that good would be something like, um, having a great relationship with your family and loving them and having a supportive relationship where everyone grows in the way they want to. And bad would be killing your whole family. Now, you could say that those things are relative and
That's such a
we
bizarre
could.
example because religion is literally entirely about killing your family. It's like the whole point.
What do you mean?
The one of the most important things that happens in every religious system is the individual choosing God and the will of the gods over their family members. Like, this is the most important thing. Um, like one of the great ones, Orestes in the Oresteia, he has to kill his mother. And she's like bearing her breasts, like, I fed you, don't. And he has to kill her because it's the will of Apollo. He has to kill his mother. And Hercules kills his wife and children because it's the will of Hera. And I mean, he feels bad about it, but it's what literally had to be done. Christ says it best. One of his followers is like, my father has died. Let me go to his funeral. And he says, let the dead bury the dead. If you're with me, that's it. You have to follow me. There's not there. The dead don't matter. Your family doesn't matter. There's more. Um, so the things that define good, the beings that define good, certainly are not good according to that metric.
I would actually say that Judaism there are parts of it where you put God over your family. Abraham though did not kill his son.
But
God
would
told him,
have.
an angel told would have
Would
is
have.
different than
I don't know.
doing it.
If you think it, you've done it, according to Christ.
I don't believe that. I've thought about murdering people and I haven't murdered them.
In your heart, you have, though.
Yeah, it's true. According to the court of law, though, and their
Well, that's the
families.
thing. If you are a spiritual person, you have to recognize that the courts, the material world, and the laws of the material world are entirely secondary to divine law.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so there's something else that I wanted to say here, and it's there is this vibe. I agree in part with the vibe because the vibe is the most. I mean, it's an incredibly important thing. I make a lot of decisions based on vibes. Um, most of my life decisions are based on vibes. But in Judaism, which I'm just inundated with right now, there's this idea of the Sabbath, and every Friday, uh, you have to go and have dinner with your family or your close community, and you have to sit around and talk to them with no phones and look them in the eye and tell them how you're doing. And there's this recurrent meeting that happens. You spend the day with them, even if you're a billionaire, the most successful person in the world. Between Friday and Saturday night, you turn your phone off and you look at your children and you ask them how their week was, and you can't escape it if you're a religious Jew, because God tells you that you have to. And the problem, I think, with listening to the vibe is that there is no structure in place to make you do it, and it doesn't seem clear to me that without a structure, you will sit down with your family and look them in the eye and have dinner with them. And instead, the corporate monster will destroy your soul, will steal every ounce of life from you.
So this is the difference this is the separate viewpoint that we have. I view God is the vibe. God is that energy. When Christians say that God is love, they mean God is energy. And thus the structure of the vibe is the manifold manifestations and emanations of God. It is merely through playing vibe or no vibe or reading vibes that you begin to grasp intuitively what the world is structured by. And it is structured by God. It's structured by divinity and energy. We talked earlier about material reality and material wealth, and I said it's only 1/4 of the world. And the other three elements exist almost purely as vibe. They exist almost purely energetically, but they are very, very real. They've always been recognized as real. And so I think, these the best natural laws are energetic laws. They're not moral laws. They're purely energetic. And so for the people who are more fixated on the corporation or their job than their family, they are not vibing. They're not living in accordance with their natural law. They have sinned against the vibe.
Okay, so one more. I want to get into a tarot reading after this, but I want to ask you one more thing to do with this. You mentioned when you make videos that most people don't fully comprehend them. And I actually think that perhaps the people that best comprehend them know more than you do somehow, or added additional layers to the conversation. But and I found I have the exact same belief. Lex Fridman had a really good point about flat earthers at some point. He said that flat earthers are telling us something and we should be listening deeply to them. Maybe not like scientifically analyzing them. That's only one layer of reality. But the fact, for instance, that flat earthers are telling us that there's a massive distrust of the scientific community, and maybe we should be paying attention to that. And like every comment I saw on that video was, Lex Fridman is an idiot for listening to flat earthers. Like, it was just like, but Lex Fridman is talking to the intellectual elite. He's not talking to the people commenting on YouTube who are angry at flat earthers and projecting their anger out at him. And in the same way, to loop back on this, there are not a lot of people that I know that feel the vibe, or that, I think a lot of people feel the vibe. I think a lot of people are not aligned in their structure enough to let the vibe resonate throughout them. And I am not perfectly aligned. Obviously, I don't know many people who are even close to that. But I would say that you are very experienced at feeling the vibe and very good at it, but most people are not. And so, is it possible to bring humanity up in their... I feel like it's a lightning rod. It's like alignment. If the lightning rod is broken, the electricity isn't going to go through. Actually, it will, but whatever.
As you study Judaism, you're going to find that is one of the most important aspects. Like, to put it in a vulgar way, if you want to vibe, if you want to understand Kabballah,
Mm.
It's literally about the lightning bolt going through the body.
Mm.
It's literally about like God strikes. Divinity does. You know, Satan falls like lightning, and Jupiter is known by lightning, and the Chinese word for God is lightning.
Mm.
Lightning and thunder are its immediate, the loudest thing imaginable, the thing that changes the world. It sets fires, it destroys, and it's electricity, it's magic. Um, so sometimes it can be like that. And if God chooses you, you will vibe, period. But the other thing to me that is the only way is playing games. It's having fun. Playing, being childlike is being closer to God than being serious and being rigid and structured incorrectly. You know, Heraclitus, the ancient Greek pre-Socratic philosopher, says God is a child and the world is blocks and toys. And I think that's very true.